Okay, we were discussing about this last time. I think this is the point we stopped at. Uh, we were discussing about evaluation, HRD evaluation. Uh, so basically, we completed still we are in the HRD process. So far, we have completed the need assessment, the first stage, and the second stage designing, third stage the implementation, and fourth stage we started last time, that is evaluation, HRD evaluation. Basically, we discussed one method of evaluation, that was uh, Kirkpatrick evaluation method, and this is the point where we stopped at last time, right? So basically, we were discussing about the data collection methods for the evaluation, because as you know, we need data to evaluate whether the training program was successful or not, right? So questionnaire is one method, interview is another method, direct observation is another method, and tests or simulations or examinations, various paper-based or simulation methods are another method, right? So basically those methods were discussed, and this one. So start with this one today, data collection methods. Basically, in collecting data, what are the guidelines to be followed? For example, especially when it comes to the questionnaire designing, as you know, this one, right? So when you select this one, questionnaire for collecting data, designing the questionnaire is very much important. Guidelines for writing effective questionnaire. So we are going to now discuss what are the good ways or the best practices in preparing questionnaire, which can be used as a mean for evaluation, employee HRD evaluation, right? So basically, the first one is you are supposed to write the questionnaire very simply and clearly. Simple and clear, right? So your questionnaire must be simple and very much clear about the content and that you are going to focus on, to make the meaning obvious, and ask separate questions, right? So don't ask mixed questions. Maybe one question in one content in one question. Don't mix up with various subjects in one content, one question, right? So please use only one question for one area, one subject, one specific item, or one specific area, right? Specifically. So don't ask the mixed type questions, mixed in the sense that uh, too many topics in one question. Provide discrete response options and explain them, right? Separate options, like for example, you can follow a Likert scale, right? I believe you understand what the Likert scale is. So basically, separate answer options. So explanation options can be given, and limit the number of response options, right? So for example, in order to have clear understanding of the responses, you can limit the number of responses. For example, Likert scale, right? So 1 to 5 Likert scale, 1 to 7 Likert scale. One is disagree about the content. Uh, Two is one is totally disagree, two is disagree, three is neutral, four is agree, five is totally agree about the content, right? So likewise, you can limit the number of responses rather than having lengthy explanations. So otherwise, suppose if there are so many participants and reading those every answer given by them take much time to read it and understand it, and that's a waste of the HRD people, right? So clear, very simple questionnaire need to be designed, in which you can limit the number of responses given, right? So by limiting those responses, obviously you need to be focused on what you want to get, right, rather than being vague on what you need to get. So basically focus on the content what you need to have from them, right? So then limit those uh, uh, responses and match the response mode to the questions. Match the response mode in the sense that maybe in writing or maybe in verbally. uh, Simply response mode need to be matched with the each question and get all the important information, right? So these are the simple guidelines that you can follow in preparing a questionnaire for evaluation, HRD evaluation. And write simply and clearly, and make so these things clearly explain in later slide. First one, how you can write simply and clearly. Good example, how often does your boss give you feedback on your job performance? Very simple question. Bad example, to what extent do administrative superiors provide information regarding the quality of performance of your people, of people on your level? Right? To what extent means simply it's a vague. To what extent simply means that you can't imagine, you can't think to which extent. The level cannot be imagined. Some people may feel or understand, perceive a big one, a big amount, or maybe this is clearly not measurable, uh, quantifiable when it comes to what extent. Simply how often, simply how often, then simply when you ask this type of a question, how often, then you can simply say the frequency. Regularly, irregularly, or number of times can be given, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, or something like that, right? To what extent mean we can't imagine what is expected, what level of what is the degree that they are expecting, right? So simple, something like this, simple questions can be incorporated. And ask discrete questions. The second one, discrete or separate questions. How often does your boss give you feedback on your job performance? To what extent? Sorry, this one. Second one, the organization's goals are clear. My role within the organization is clear, right? So rather than organization's goals and my roles in one question, right? Bad example because two areas covered, right? So those two areas can be separated by two questions. Then provide discrete responses. Good example, during the last 3 months, how often did you receive feedbacks on your work? Like this, you can give some answers, specific answers to uh, default answers to respond with. And bad example, rarely, occasional, frequently. Then you can't have an understanding about these from these answers, because occasionally does not mean to what extent. Frequently does not mean to what extent. Rarely does not mean to what extent, right? But when it comes to this one, not once, about every month, about once a week, about every day, several times a day, right? Or maybe if you consider on this, you can make this one is as more specific, like twice a day, thrice a day, 4 times a day, something like that, right? So simply these type of questions can be included. And limit the number of responses, limit the number of response options. What percent of the time you are generally sure of what the outcomes of your efforts will be, right? So these are the responses rather than a lengthy answer, right? So limit, then people, we can simply have a rough understanding rather than a lengthy answer. Match the response mode to the questions. To what extent are you generally satisfied with your job? Right? Simply match the response. The response must be matched with the content of the question or mode of the question. Right? So if you ask this one, for example, you are supposed to get the answer as the extent. To what extent, which means that the level, right? But here uh, question starts with this. Simply by the nature of the question, simply answer will be yes or no. Are you generally satisfied with your job? Right? If you ask this type of a questions, obviously the answer would be simply yes or no. Right? You can't give an answer something like this to this type of question. Right? Simple yes or no answer. If you draft this type of question starting with are you, uh, obviously yes or no, the answer comes as yes or no, right? But if you ask this, something like this, to what extent, then simply answer must be designed based on the content of the answer, the type of the question, right? To what extent do you agree? To what extent do you satisfy? To what extent are you motivated? To what extent that you are motivated? To what extent that you are agreed? To what extent that you are engaged? Right? So if these type of questions asked, simply uh, these type of answers can be developed, right? Uh, to what extent do you agree? If this type of uh, question is asked, to what extent do you agree, or you agree with this, you agree with the following statements, statement 1 2 3 can be given, then a simple answer is 1 denotes dissatisfied, totally dissatisfied, 2 denotes the dissatisfied, 3 denotes neutral, 4 agree, uh, 5 strongly agree. Because the question asks as to what extent do you agree, or are you agree with something else, right? Uh, uh, so likewise, you are supposed to match the response based on the type of the question or the mode of the question. With a simple yes or no answer question, the simply answer must be like this. Whether if you want to measure the a certain degree of a content, sim simply you can use this type of a answer tags. Right. So data collection, again, still we are in the data collection part. Advantages and disadvantages of data collection method. Simply interview method, and we are discussing initially focusing on the interview method advantages and disadvantage. Interview, simply, as you know, face-to-face interview. You go to the trainee, and or maybe trainee is asked to come to the HRD department and simply have a face-to-face contact with the HRD executive and the trainee, and simply ask some questions about the training, and simply based on the answers given, you can simply note down the answers they are giving, and simply you can understand whether they have understood the program or whether the program was successful or not, right? Simply interview is that. Advantages, this method is very flexible. Uh, this offers an opportunity for more clarification and deep answers, so in-depth answers uh, uh, can be obtained. More explanatory type of answers can be obtained. If I ask a question, if you ask a question from the HRD people, how you feel about what you perceive about your program. So then he or she might give a lengthy answer. So then simply we can have in-depth evaluations from those type of interviews, and simply personal contact is there, right? Face-to-face contact is there. uh, that is one example, because otherwise if you provide a questionnaire, sometimes you don't uh, uh, see the person. Maybe sometimes uh, you don't know who gave this answer. Sometimes carelessly the participants might respond to the questions without being serious about the questions. Just roughly they can respond to the questions. Maybe sometimes uh, the answers may be true or may be false. Sometimes there is a high possibility to provide false answers to the questionnaires, but in this method that possibility is limited, because when you have a personal contact with the participant. And limitation is face-to-face threat potential. Sometimes uh, uh, when you are meeting the learner or the trainee face to face, sometimes uh, the trainee may be nervous to respond, that inhibit accurate picture or accurate feedback from the uh, participant, right? Or maybe sometimes uh, the HRD personnel wants to get the positive feedback, right? For example, I just, in my evaluation, I just want to have a positive feedback about my lecturing. Then I threat you, provide me a positive feedback rather than open feedback, right? So when you meet a person, when you meet uh, HRD person to person, HRD people in person, obviously there is a, from the evaluator side, there may be a kind of a force uh, to provide positive feedbacks rather than uh, negative feedbacks. For example, suppose you feel that you participated to the training program and you feel that the program was not successful. You didn't get nothing. You didn't get anything, right, from the program. Your now perception is really negative about the program. But when you meet a HRD personnel at the evaluation, obviously he force you to provide positive feedbacks, indirectly or maybe directly, right? In that case, you have to provide a positive feedback, even though you feel that the program is negative, not successful, right? So that possibility is there when you are evaluated face to face. Then labor intensive, that is face to face, you need more labor. uh, you need more people to interview the participants. Suppose if there are 100 participants in the labor in the training program, you need more HRD people to evaluate, because everyone need to be interviewed. But when it comes to the questionnaire and other document type of evaluations, obviously you can use uh, very limited staff. Then trained observers needed. Trained HRD people needed to interview them, because not all the people can't be done this interview. Trained, skillful people needed to handle the interviews with the trainees. Otherwise, they may provide false information. Questionnaire advantages, disadvantage: low cost. Because why low cost? Because no much people needed to handle the interviews when this is compared with the interview method. Honesty increased if anonymous, if this questionnaire is given anonymous, without providing without providing personal informations, the trainees are asked to provide a feedback without giving their personal information. So obviously then they might provide, there is a high possibility to provide uh, honest information. Honestly, the feedback informations may be provided, whether maybe sometimes real, uh, uh, honest uh, explanations can be given with this method, because the personal information is not revealed, right? So because questionnaires are given anonymous. Anonymity, privacy is possible with this method, and respondent sets pace or speed, because quickly they can fill the questionnaire and submit, because with this method feedback can be quickly obtained. Feedback or the evaluations can be done very quickly. Limitations, possibly inaccurate data, because if suppose if some of the participants are hurried to go home or hurried to do some other work, obviously they might not fill the questionnaire by clearly reading the questions on the questionnaire. Sometimes roughly they go through the questionnaire and roughly they give the answers that has high possibility to give the false information about the program. So therefore, possibly inaccurate data can be generated with this method. Respondents are set varying paces. Obviously, respondents are, uh, which means that obviously respondents give varying answers. Return rate is beyond control, right? So once the questionnaire is given, suppose 100 people participated to the training for the program, we delivered 100 questionnaires, but returning them is not really assured. Even though we requested to give, let's say maybe you received only 50% of 100, right? Or maybe 25%. The returning rate is questionable. Observation, non-threatening. Non-threatening, we can't force, because we don't talk with the trainees. We don't speak with the trainees. Obviously, we observe their behavior. In that case, we can't threat. HRD people can't threat to give positive feedbacks about the training program. An excellent way to measure behavior change. Limitations, possibly disruptive. Disruptive in the sense that damage, damage in the sense that, let's say, uh, uh, there is a, sometimes this is purely a subjective interpretation, because observers in the sense that the HRD people or the evaluators may possibly evaluate the behavior negatively, even though their behavior is positive, because of the subjective interpretations. Reactive effect possible, and trained observers needed. Reactive effect is possible, right? So reactions uh, can be happen, or can possibly happen from the HRD people side, for the observers, or for the behaviors demonstrated by the uh, 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 trainees or learners. And for this as well, trained people needed to evaluate. Written test, again, this is low cost method, quickly processed. We can quickly handle the evaluation, and also we can easily administer, and for a large sample, in the sense that large number of participants, this method is mostly possible. Uh, Limitation, of written test is maybe threatening sometimes, threatening in the sense that forced to give positive feedbacks, uh, or maybe sometimes negative feedbacks, possible low relation to the job performance. Sometimes you obtained the training on something, but the questionnaire or the examination test is something else than the content that you learn, right? So maybe sometimes out of the focus questions, uh, maybe they are uh, uh, in the examination paper rather than what you learned. Then performance test, uh, that is reliable, objective, close relations to the job performance, because performance test obviously is related to the only job performance, because the performance test is evaluated based on the job. The performance test is set based on the job performance. So in that case, obviously, uh, that has a close relationship between the job performance. Limitation, time consuming, and also you need much time to develop that uh, test, because you need to think about the various evaluation techniques to develop uh, that kind of a test, to design that kind of a evaluation method, performance test. Right. So choosing the data collection methods, and which method that you can select is dependent on various factors. Which method that you are supposed to select is dependent on various factors. The first one is validity of the evaluation method and reliability of the evaluation method and practicability of the evaluation method. So based on these three factors, so obviously you can determine which method to use. Right. So then types of data. Uh, uh, what type of data? Individual performance data, system-wide performance data, and economic data can be obtained uh, to have the data for evaluation. Individual performance data, as you see, test scores. For example, if we hold an examination test paper and the individual test scores obtained can be taken as the data for evaluation, and number of units produced, timelines of performance, quality of performance, attendance, attitudes, right? So basically, Kirkpatrick's individual trainees' behavior can be measured through these type of individual performance data. Level 2 and 3 simply are facilitated by these type of data when you use the Kirkpatrick model. System-wide performance data, as you know, company organization-wide data. Maybe sometimes you have a performance management system. In that, simply you can retrieve these data like productivity, rework, scrap, customer and client satisfaction, timeliness in the sense that the targets completed, the time durations, how many delayed performance target completions, and scrap works, accidents, rework, idle times, machine down times, and all these are system-wide data, right? Then economic data, simply profits, product liability, avoidance of penalties such as fines for non-compliance with laws and regulations. Maybe sometimes a customer may file a case against the company claiming that the product is not in a good quality. A defect have been sold, and by being against With that act, a particular customer may file a case against the organization. So likewise, number of similar type of uh, cases filed in the court against the company uh, is a economic data. Maybe sometimes customer complaints about the customer care and the quality of the products, right? Number of customer complaints received and number of court cases judged against our company. Uh, so simply these type of uh, results or the data can be obtained to evaluate a particular training program's effectiveness. And market share, right? So whether market share has been increased or decreased after the training, right? So data provided directly by individuals involved in the training program. That is simply self-report data, right? So otherwise, we can use self-report data. Simply employees asked to make a report, design a report, write a report on their own feelings and reflections about the training program or development program. That is the self-report data. Self-report data can offer personality data, attitudes, and perceptions about the training program. Two issues occurred when relying on self-report data, basically mono-method bias and socially desirable answers. What is mono-method bias? If both reports in a before and after evaluation come from the same person at the same time, conclusion may be questionable, right? Suppose if an employee, if the learner is asked to submit a report before the training program, self-report before the training program, and a self-report after the training program, development program. In that sense, sometimes the program, the report, two reports may be more or less the same, right? So simply, you can't have a strong conclusion whether he has been improved or not by the HRD program, right? So that is mono-method bias. And then socially desirable answers can be provided. Respondents may report what they think the researcher or the boss wants to hear rather than the truth, right? So in order to satisfy our HRD people, we provide positive answers, even though we feel that the program is negative, right? That is socially desirable answers. Right. So research designed to HRD evaluation. So in particular, HRD evaluation is a kind of a research, right? HRD evaluation simply means that uh, a kind of a research you need for the evaluation. Obviously, you have to do a research. It's purely something like a research, right? So that then you have to design a research for this. Designs of HRD evaluations, obviously, it is something like designing a research. Refers to approaches or styles of assessing the impact of training on reaction, learning, and behaviors and results. If you simply use the Kirkpatrick evaluation model, simply you can use this title to your dissertation, for your dissertation, right? Simply for your dissertation, you can simply take this title. You can take one or two training programs, or simply you can take our HRD module, all the students who took the HRD module, and simply you can measure the reaction, learning, behavior, and results. Kirkpatrick model can be used to assess the effectiveness or the success of the HRD module. Simply by giving a questionnaire to all our students, simply you can understand their reaction level. their learning level and their behavioral level and results levels, right? So I can give you this assignment, this as an assignment, simply to provide a report on this as the second assignment, right? Simply you can assess our HRD module success, whether it is success or not. I can get a feedback, and you are supposed to write a reflective essay on the HRD subject module, for example. For this module, this is kind of a training, a development program, right? Most commonly used designs are post-measure design, pre-post measure design, and pre-post measure control group design. Apart from the Kirkpatrick evaluation, we have some other research designs which can be used to assess, to evaluate a particular training program or development program. One, what is post-measure design? Simply, post-measure design, like Kirkpatrick model, is a post-measure design, right? Because after the training and development program, we simply measure the effectiveness. We simply check the effectiveness, or we simply uh, assess the success or failure of the training program. We simply evaluate the program after the training done. That is a post-measure design. Then pre-post measure design, in this, as the name implies, we evaluate learners before the training or development program, and at this and as well as and after, again after the uh, training or development program. So both pre in the sense that before the training development program, HRD program, and uh, just after the training or HRD program, right? So then if there are variations between pre and post, improvement in the sense that, uh, in other words, improvement, obviously, we can simply determine the training program is successful, right? So suppose before the training program, as a figure, we can take their performance level is nearly 20%. After the training program, their performance level is nearly 70%. The gap is nearly 50%, which means that 50 increased. That 50 percentage of 50 is increased, has been increased by the training, right? So which means that training is really successful because employees' performance has been increased by nearly 50%. That is pre-post measure. Simply you can assess whether a training program or development program is successful or not based on pre-post evaluation, right? So simply Kirkpatrick evaluation can be used as a pre-evaluation and post-evaluation. This framework can be used. And pre-post measure with the control group design. Simply you assess, evaluate your program in advance, and at the same time in advance, right? Suppose this is the pre and this is the post, right? So, and this is the target group and this is the control group. This is the control group and this is the control group. Again, this is the target group. This is the pre-test. This is the post-test. Suppose this is the target group. This is the control group. This is the target group and this is the control group. Suppose the target group pre-test performance is 20%, right? Then they were sent to the training program. Then after the training program, their performance was measured and found that their performance has increased to 70%. This is 20%. And at the same time, before once we measure their performance, target group performance, we have a control group, similar type of people who are doing the same job is taken, and they are named as control group. Right? Suppose 10 people were selected for the training in the HR department. Same HR department, another 10 employees were taken who are not sent for the training program. Similar type of training program. That is the control group. And their performance is measured at the same time. Suppose their performance is 30%. That's why they have not taken. Their performance is 50%. Because they are performing well, but these are the people who are performing poor, then they have been selected for the training. And before the training program, both groups' performance level is measured, target group and the control group. Then they are not sent for the training program, and these are the people who are sent for the training program. That's why they are called as target people, right? Target group. Then they were given the training program, and after the program, their performance is measured and found that their performance level has been increased to 70%. And they are the people who were not sent to the training program, but after the training program, after these people's training program, their performance is measured and found that only 50% their performance is remaining the same, right? Because they were not sent to the training program, right? So now compare these two groups' performance. Obviously, their performance remains the same, but their performance, target group's performance, has been increased by nearly 20% when compared to the control group, right? So which means that this training program is really successful. Clear? This is pre-post measure control group design. Right, post measure design given, limitations are given, just offer the training, then simply we offer the training, and then simply we measure the training. That was explained, and limitation is clearly given. I think with the meaning, you can simply understand the meaning of limitation. The pre-post measure, before offering the training, simply measure the training, simply measure the performance, and after the training again measure the performance. And we have advantages and disadvantages. And pre-post method with the control group, procedure is given. I explain everything in detail. Just go through this with the memory of what I explained. Then you can simply understand. Here, this is the experimental group. This is the control group. This is the target group, in other words. Right? Then compare their performance. Obviously, if the target group's performance is increased by the control group, obviously, training is successful, or the development program is successful. Right. So assessment results are given here. Special training, another example. This was explained in another. This is explaining by another example. Simply you can refer this. Before the training, performance, number of units sold 52, after the training 61, before the training, experimental group and target group. So simply by percentage values, these are the experimental group has increased their performance rather than the target group, right? So which means that the training program is successful. Right. Then cost benefits of training. Costs and benefits. By simply reading all these, you will be able to understand, I believe. Fees for the internal trainers, pays and incentives for trainees, materials needed for training, cost of training tools, transportation cost, opportunity cost, establishment cost, expenditure for meals and refreshments, external consultation fees, and other related fees. What are the benefits? Increased in production, decrease in defects and wastage, reduced supervision, changing attitudes favorably, decreased the employee turnover, decreased tardiness, decreased absenteeism, new skills that lead to increased better performance, and other related benefits. Right. So now competencies, development of 7 competencies, uh, especially when it comes to the development, employee development, we need to develop competencies. Right. So what are those competencies? Technical competencies, human relations competencies, conceptual competency, intelligence, personality, personal character, and personal management competencies, right? So those are the 7 competencies, and those are essential for doing a job, especially when you are becoming a manager, right? So those competencies are essential to become the manager. So basically, for the management trainees, these areas are targeted for uh, the development programs, especially the management development programs. Right. Done. Group activity is not given. This was given for the previous batch, and I'm not, because since this is done in online, this is not possible. Even if it was done on physically in person, we could have done it at the classroom. Anyway, forget about this.